Hello, class. Hope everything's going well. Want to talk to you a little bit today about the persuasion strategy. I'm just going to read over the chapter for you. Um, Remember, the third essay is integrating three strategies: persuasion, argumentation, and exemplification. So we're going to understand them all separately, and then we're going to try to figure out how to integrate them all. So the purpose of persuasion in writing is to convince, motivate, or move readers towards a certain point of view or opinion. The act of trying to persuade automatically implies that more than one opinion on the subject can be argued. The idea of argument often conjures up images of two people yelling and screaming in anger. In writing, however, an argument is very different. An argument is a reasoned opinion supported and explained by evidence. To argue in writing is to advance knowledge and ideas in a positive way. Written arguments often fail when they employ ranting rather than reasoning. Most of us feel inclined to try to win the arguments we enter. On some level, we all want to be right, and we want others to see the error of their ways. More times than not, however, arguments in which both sides try to win end up producing losers all around. The more productive approach is to persuade your audience to consider your opinion as a valid one, not simply the right one. And I agree with this. I think people are way too concerned with winning, right? We all want to win. We want to win. Well, what about what's true, right? Because that's what's really important. Never mind winning, right? Okay, so the structure of a persuasive essay. The following 5 features make up the structure of a persuasive essay: introduction and thesis, opposing and qualifying ideas, strong evidence in support of claim, style of tone and language, and a compelling conclusion. Creating an introduction and thesis. The persuasive essay begins with an engaging introduction that presents the general topic. The thesis typically appears somewhere in the introduction. It always appears at the end. I don't know why they're acting like that. No, let me clarify. Don't listen to your book. It is always at the end. And clearly states the writer's point of view. Because an argument implies differing points of view on the subject, you must be sure to acknowledge those opposing ideas. And you do need to acknowledge opposing ideas in your argument, but I caution you against, don't sit on the fence. Don't say, well, these things are for and these things are against, because then it looks like you're not sure. If you're going to weigh the opposing arguments, weigh them, but give me a refutation. Tell me why your position, the one that you started with, is better than the one that you're weighing. That way you can seem like you're considering the other points, but you're not like making it to where you're not actually arguing anything. You're just kind of reporting on a subject and not picking a side. Avoiding ideas that conflict with your own gives the reader the impression that you may be uncertain, fearful, or unaware of opposing ideas. It's amazing how many people are unaware of opposing ideas, right? Thus, it is essential that you not only address counter arguments, but you also do so respectfully. This is another thing that's been lost today. Try to address opposing arguments either earlier rather than later in your essay. Rhetorically speaking, ordering your positive arguments last allows you to better address ideas that conflict with your own, because it allows you to focus on countering those arguments. This way you can leave your reader thinking about your argument rather than someone else's. You have the last word. I think you can just integrate opposing viewpoints in your body paragraphs, and you don't really have to structure it necessarily like that. Remember, you have there is no one right way to do it. I have my own personal formula that I provided for you in the Poultry for POTUS video. So if you watch that, you can find out how to plug in this stuff very easily, or you can follow this kind of stuff. I do want you to weigh counter arguments as well, right? Acknowledging points of view different from your own also has the effect of fostering more credibility between you and the audience. This is true. Readers will know from the outset that you are aware of opposing ideas and you are not afraid to give them space. It is also helpful to establish the limits of your argument and what you are trying to accomplish. In effect, you are conceding early on that your argument is not the ultimate authority on a given topic. Such humility can go a long way toward earning credibility and trust with your audience. That's ethos. Audience members will know from the beginning that you are a reasonable writer, and they will trust your argument as a result. For example, in the following concessionary statement, the writer advocates for stricter gun control laws, but she admits it will not solve all of the nation's problems with crime. Although tougher gun control laws are a powerful first step in decreasing violence in our streets, such legislation alone cannot end these problems, since guns are not the only problem we face. So there she's weighing the counter argument in a way that's giving credence to it, but isn't really submitting to the idea that we don't need any gun control at all, right? Such a concession will be welcomed by those who might disagree with this writer's argument in the first place. To effectively persuade the readers, writers need to be realistic in their goals and humble in their approach to get readers to listen to their ideas. See tables of phrases of concession for some useful phrases of concession. Although, granted that, of course, still, though, and yet. Okay, so yes, all of that is true, and that's good to know. You really want to pay attention to your tone. You don't want to sound like you think you're absolutely right and everyone else is wrong and yada yada yada. If you have that kind of tone in your essay, even though you may actually be right, it doesn't really matter because it will turn people off. Persuasion is about thinking about how you would be received by others and thinking about what are the best ways to reach others, right? You don't want to go up and scream in someone's face if you want them to listen to you meaningfully. You want to try to appeal to their better nature and reason with them. This is what persuasion is all about. Okay. Bias in writing. This is a big problem. Everyone has various biases on any number of topics. For example, you might have a bias towards listening to music radio stations rather than talk radio or news programs. You might have a bias towards working at night rather than in the morning, or working by deadlines rather than getting tasks done in advance. These examples identify minor biases, of course, but they still indicate preferences and opinions. Handling bias in writing and daily life can be a useful skill. It will allow you to articulate your own points of view while also defending yourself against unreasonable points of view. The ideal in persuasive writing is to let your reader know your bias, but do not let that bias blind you to the primary components of good argumentation: sound, thoughtful evidence, and a reasonable address of opposing sides. You do, like I said, you do want to weigh the opposing sides in your body paragraphs where you can. The strength of a personal bias is that it can motivate you to construct a strong argument. If you are invested in the topic, you are more likely to care about the piece of writing. Similarly, the more you care, the more time and effort you will put forth, and the better the final product will be. The weakness of bias is when the bias begins to take over the essay. When, for example, you neglect opposing ideas, exaggerate your points, or repeatedly insert yourself ahead of the subject by using I too often. Being aware of all three of these pitfalls will help you avoid them. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say, do not use first-person pronouns at all in argumentative writing once you are into the second essay and third essay. I don't want to hear you say I, me, mine, none of that stuff. And there are reasons why. I'll read you the textbook's reasons, and then if I think that they have touched on everything, I'll let you know. The use of I in writing is a topic of debate, and the acceptance of its usage varies from instructor to instructor. I don't want you to do it. It is difficult to predict the preferences for all your present and future instructors. This is true. But consider the effects it can potentially have on your writing. Be mindful of the use of I in your writing because it can make your argument sound overly biased. There are two primary reasons. So here are their reasons for why you shouldn't use I. Excessive repetition of any word will eventually catch the reader's attention, and usually not a good way. The use of I is no different. That's true. The insertion of I into a sentence alters not only the way the sentence might sound, but also the composition of the sentence itself. I is often the subject of a sentence. It is the subject of the essay. If the subject of the essay is supposed to be, say, smoking, then by inserting yourself into the sentence, you are effectively displacing the subject of the essay in the secondary position. So these are good points. I would also add that I implies expertise that you don't have. So like if I'm a doctor and I say, I think this treatment is the best treatment for cancer, that I is important because my credibility matters, right? My opinion on the subject of cancer matters because I'm a doctor. However, you're not a doctor, so if you say, I think this treatment is the best treatment for cancer, well, what does that mean? You don't actually know that. So by removing yourself and removing your opinions, you don't give expertise where you don't have it. The other reason is that it invites you to give your opinion. And opinions are not really what we're dealing with. The textbook uses the word opinion, but actually opinions typically have little basis in fact, right? My opinion is that the moon is made of cheese. It's like, well, okay, that's my opinion, but who cares what my opinion is if it's not based in reality? So be careful with giving forth opinions, right? And try to not use I. Okay. Facts are statements that can be definitely proven using objective data. The statement that is a fact is absolutely valid. In other words, the statement can be pronounced as true or false. For example, 2 + 2 = 4. This expression identifies a true statement or a fact because it can be proved with objective data. Opinions are personal views or judgments. An opinion is what an individual believes about a particular subject. However, an opinion in argumentation must have legitimate backing. Adequate evidence and credibility should support the opinion. Consider the credibility of expert opinions. Experts in a given field have the knowledge and credentials to make their opinion meaningful to a larger audience. Their credibility is sometimes called ethos and is one way that we make our arguments persuasive. For example, you seek the opinion of your dentist when it comes to the health of your gums. And you seek the opinion of your mechanic when it comes to the maintenance of your car. Both have knowledge and credentials in those respective fields, which is why their opinions matter to you. But the authority of your dentist may be greatly diminished should he or she offer an opinion about your car, and vice versa. In writing, you want to strike a balance between credible facts and authoritative opinions. Relying on one or the other will likely lose more of your audience than it gains. Okay. Using visual elements to strengthen arguments. Adding visual elements to a persuasive argument can often strengthen its persuasive effect. There are two main types of visual elements: quantitative visuals and qualitative visuals. Quantitative visuals present data graphically. They allow the audience to see statistics spatially. The purpose of using quantitative visuals is to make logical appeals to the audience. An appeal based on logic is called logos. This is from the triangle ethos, pathos, and logos. Ethos is the appeal to credibility, logos is the appeal to logic, and pathos is the appeal to emotion. These are the three tools you have when you're trying to persuade someone, and they all have proper uses and they all have pitfalls. So logos, and it persuades the reader using reasoning. Often we can provide information in data form to persuade the reader through logic. Quantitative visuals help display the information clearly. For example, sometimes it is easier to understand the disparity in certain statistics if you could see how the disparity looks graphically. This is true. Bar graphs, pie charts, Venn diagrams, histograms, and line graphs are all ways of presenting quantitative data and spatial dimensions. Qualitative visuals represent images that appeals to the audience's emotions. Persuading your reader based on the emotional appeal is called pathos. Photographs and pictorial images are examples of qualitative visuals that can create an emotional appeal. Such images often try to convey a story, and seeing an actual example can carry more power than hearing or reading about an example. For example, one image of a child suffering from malnutrition will likely have more of an emotional impact than pages dedicated to describing that same condition in writing. All right, writing at work. You will find that many of the rhetorical devices used in writing are the same ones used in the workplace. When making a business presentation, you typically have limited time to get across your idea. Providing visual elements for your audience can be an effective time-saving tool. Quantitative visuals in business presentations serve the same purpose as they do in persuasive writing. They should make logical appeals by showing numerical data in a spatial design. Qualitative visuals should be pictures that might appeal to your audience's emotions. You may use graphs and stuff if you really want to. It's not required. They do recommend it, but if you're trying to write generally, I do not require you to use graphics or graphs of any kind. Writing a persuasive essay. So choose a topic that you feel passionate about. If your instructor requires you to write about a specific topic, I do not. Approach the subject from an angle that interests you. Begin your essay with an engaging introduction. Your thesis should typically appear somewhere in your introduction. Be sure to have a clear thesis that states your position and previews the main points that your essay will address. Start by acknowledging and explaining points of view that may conflict with your own to build credibility and trust with your audience. Also, state the limits of your argument. This, too, helps you sound more reasonable and honest to those who may be naturally inclined to disagree with your view. By respectively acknowledging and opposing arguments and conceding limitations to your own view, you set a measured and reasonable tone for the essay. Make your appeals in support of your thesis by using sound, credible evidence. Use a balance of facts and opinions from a wide range of sources such as scientific studies, expert testimony, statistics. Do not use personal anecdotes. Why is this in here? Okay, I'm going to call this guy that wrote this textbook and chew him. Please do not use any personal anecdotes in your essay. Don't even reference yourself. I don't know why. No science essay or anything would ever use personal anecdotes. Nothing academically credible. The most useless evidence is anecdotal evidence, especially personal anecdotes. Why is that the case? Okay, I'll give you an example. Let's say that I go fishing one day, and let's say that I happen to go fishing in a place where it's real near a zoo and an anaconda escaped. And while I'm fishing, an anaconda jumps out of the lake and bites me in the face. All right. So then I go and I tell everyone in the world, don't go fishing in Georgia, because if you do, an anaconda will jump out of the lake and bite you in the face. Well, my experience where that happened is not indicative of the trends. I don't even think there are any anacondas in Georgia. If they are, they're held in captivity. And to say that you will get bit by one every time you go to a lake is absurd. Just because that may have happened in a very rare circumstance to one single person does not mean that has any bearing on the way that we should interpret fact. So this person should never, whoever wrote this textbook, and forgive me for going against contradicting what I've offered you as sound material, but whoever said personal anecdotes are a good way to prove anything is out of their mind. Each piece of evidence should be fully explained and clearly stated. Yada, yada, see chapters 1 through whatever. Okay, make sure that your style and tone are appropriate for your subject and audience. Tailor your language and word choice to these two factors while still being true to your own voice. Consider who your audience is when you're doing persuasive writing. If you were speaking to like the United Atheist Convention, you wouldn't get up and start reading Bible quotes and stuff, because those people would shut off. Likewise, it could go the other way around. You know, if you were talking to a bunch of religious people, you wouldn't be reading them Charles Darwin. So the audience you have is really important for how you structure your tone and how you what sort of information you provide and how you go about doing that. Okay, so they have a sample persuasive essay here. We'll just take a look at the thesis statement. In the Poultry for POTUS video, I gave you a breakdown of thesis and topic sentences the way that I personally like them, using a specific kind of formula. But you can, of course, do it this way too if you like. There's no right answer. As long as you do an argumentative essay well and you meet all of the requirements of the essay, you don't have to follow any specific formula. But I do have that for you. So the thesis is technical high schools should be established in every county in Georgia because they can provide the technical training that companies need, get young people into the workforce earlier, and they can reduce the number of dropouts. That's a good thesis statement, right? So we're arguing, what should we do? We got to put tech schools in every county and in Georgia because they can provide all this stuff. And then we have these 3 tiers. So each one of those tiers could be its own topic sentence, right? About how you know, they provide the technical training and they get young people into the workforce and they reduce the number of dropouts. Each one of those is its own topic sentence. For each paragraph, you provide evidence from secondary sources to strengthen. You can show how tech schools can make these things happen using statistics and things that you get from scholarly sources. Then you explain the evidence in your own voice, and you do that over and over again. The conclusion, you just got to sort of lay it all out. Don't repeat yourself. You know, the same sort of tactics that you had for the first essay in the conclusion, open-ended questions, speculation, predictions, the kinds of things that you can't normally do, perfect for the conclusion. So if you follow that structure, you will produce a good essay. You can use my formula, problem, solution, so what, or you can just put forth a claim like this with good subpoints. Either way, this is what we're looking for. So that concludes. I'm losing my voice. I would yammer on some more, but I've been talking. I was reading a play earlier. So that pretty much takes care of it for the persuasion strategy. We're going to study argumentation and exemplification as well, and that will prepare us for Essay 2, where we're going to use all 3 of those strategies in conjunction with one another. So I hope you have an excellent week. Please email me with any questions.